Hi again, this is week 6 of AI, Robots, and Ethics. And this week we are going to be turning our attention to the question of moral patiency, specifically whether machines, understood as either algorithms or robots or artificial intelligence, can in fact be accorded some status as a person. In other words, something that has rights that we would need to respect. Remember, from our introduction, we're looking at the moral relationship as always involving at least two components: the moral actor, on the one hand, which is the agent, and the moral recipient, or the moral patient. The last 3 weeks, we've been looking at the question of moral agency. And moral agency always asks the question whether something can be responsible or held accountable for the decisions she, he, or it makes, and therefore can be the responsible party in decision making or actions in the world. A good example is the self-driving car. If the self-driving car accidentally kills a pedestrian, the question is who's accountable for that death? And obviously the question we've been looking at for the last several weeks has been whether or not machines can be held accountable for the decisions they make or the actions that are released by them into the world in which we live. This week, we're turning our attention to the other side of the equation. We're looking at whether or not machines can be considered a moral patient. That is, whether a machine could be considered to have rights or social standing that would be recognized both legally and morally. And a lot of what we're going to talk about this week is going to center on the question of personhood, this notion of the person. Legally speaking, person is different than human being. Human being is a category of a kind of species. Person is a legal category which recognizes the moral standing generally of human beings, but not just human beings. I mean, there are currently some animals that have been recognized as legal and moral persons. Specifically, the court in India, the Supreme Court, decided 2 years ago to extend the status of personhood to dolphins. And the idea here was that if dolphins were given the status of person, they could not be exploited in dolphin shows and zoos and other ways. And so the court decided that dolphins are non-human persons. We've also done the same with corporations. Currently, in both U.S. and international law, corporations are an artificial entity that have the status of personhood. They are legally recognized as persons, and therefore they can be harmed and they can be held accountable for what they do or do not do in the world. So the question we want to address today is whether or not machines could be accorded the same status. Is it possible that an AI or a robot or a socially interactive device would be or could be considered a person, both legally and morally speaking? We have 2 readings that are going to address this question. The first reading is a reading from David Kalerve called Imagining Non-Biological Machines as a Legal Person. And what Kalerve will do is really grapple with the question of personhood and ask what is a person, what is not a person, and extend this argument that has been made recently about the corporation being a person to other artificial entities like AIs and robots. And his conclusion is, if we look at the way the word person or the concept person has developed in the last several decades, it seems very likely that a robot or a machine could be and should be accorded the legal status of person because of the way in which it intersects with both our legal concepts and our moral concepts. On the flip side, we will have an argument from the opposing position, which is going to come from Joanna Bryson, who is an AI scientist working out of the United Kingdom. And Bryson has an article which I think is really interesting called Robots Should Be Slaves. Unlike Kalerve, Bryson is going to argue that robots are tools like any other technology, and therefore considering them persons would not only be wrong, but could potentially be dangerous. And her argument, although sounding a little extreme, is going to say we need to toe the line and say that machines, no matter how intelligent they appear to be, no matter how empathetic they are with us, are just tools. And therefore they are instruments, and as instruments, they should be completely considered as something we use for our own ends. And therefore, basically, a kind of slave. an instrumental means to our ends. So you have two opposing positions here. On the one hand, the robot as person. On the other hand, the robot as just machine. And in reading this, what I want you to figure out is, where do you stand on this continuum between the one extreme and the other? Whose argument do you find more persuasive and why? And if you notice, the questions I've given you for guiding the reading really ask you to grapple with this component and come up with your own understanding of where you would situate machines on a continuum of personhood on the one hand and slavery on the other hand. So I hope you enjoy the readings. One little personal note, which I think is maybe useful. I know Joanna Bryson. She and I were roommates in Chicago when we were going to graduate school. And this is one article that she and I have argued a great deal about. Right now, I'm on the side that leans more in the direction of personhood, and she's more on the side of leaning more in the direction of robotic slavery. So we have a very robust and contentious debate about this, but we can talk more about that when I'm in Warsaw and we engage in this in a much more direct way. So that's it. Have a good week. Enjoy the readings. And again, look at the study questions before you do the reading and use them as a way to guide your activities. Thanks. We'll see you later. Bye.